Hello, boys. This is Dr. Infinity, and welcome to the Trough.
Well, come on, men. 3 cheers for her grace. Hip, hip.
Hooray! Hooray! Hip, hip! Hooray! Hip, hip! Hooray!
This week, I'm going to be talking about A Mandate of Sword and Railgun. This is a Star Shatter anthology by Black Knight, and I'm also going to be talking about Toadstool magazine, which is this little anthology. If you don't know what the Trough is, this is where I like to review indie works, like indie authors, and just do little spotlights on stuff I like. So I'm going to have links to both of these down below where you can purchase these works. They are both recommendations. I will say Toadstool is a very high recommendation. I'll get into Toadstool later, but very much so. With Mandate of Sword and Railgun, I'm putting an asterisk next to it. It is a recommendation, but it's a bit softer. I don't really like putting numbers or whatever on like what I would rate this, because I don't think that's like great. It's for me, it's like, do I recommend this or not? But I guess like out of like 5, I'd put this at like a 3. Like, I'm willing to like read more and stuff, and there's definitely a lot of stuff I enjoyed out of it, and it's a little anthology, so you might like one story and dislike some others, or liked a few and I didn't really care for that one. I'm going to talk about A Mandate of Sword and Railgun first, so if you're here just for Toadstool, I'm going to have a timestamp in the description so you can just jump right ahead to Toadstool. Otherwise, we're going to get right in. There's going to be full spoilers and everything. Overall, I do like the anthology. There are some stories I don't really care for, and there's some kind of what I would say are bigger problems I have with some of the writing. But overall, I would say I enjoyed it. So I don't believe English is the author's first language, and there's some awkward phrasing here and there, but it's very readable overall. I didn't really see any issues with the editing, just a couple of awkward phrasing moments. Yeah, I'm just going to touch on some of the stories. I'm not going to get super in depth, but there's going to be spoilers in such form. Explorers, this is one about some students, they're Terrans, and this is my first introduction to the Shatterstar, I guess, universe. I guess that's what it's called. I think there are a few books in the series, and at some point I think I will read more of the series, but not right now. I have a pretty long backlog. One thing I will say, that the politics in Shatterstar are fairly apparent, and I don't view that as necessarily a bad thing. I think there is kind of a push in like the indie market and such that we want to have stories that are non-political, quote unquote, or we just don't want politics in them, but I don't think that's correct. I think we want to write good stories, make good media that will have our politics in it. Now, saying that, I do think some of the politics in here can come across as a bit too strong, like less can be more, but I don't disagree with like any of the political stuff being brought up in the book. Anyways, I thought Explorers was decent. We just get like a little introduction to the world, and there's also humans have something called a client races, and this is just like we have talking rabbits and like gorillas and apparently hamsters, and you're like, okay. I don't really, maybe this is probably explained in the other books, but I don't really get like why some animals were turned into client races but not others, but there's probably something like behind that. The resistance, this was some Terrans are in some trench warfare against this cartel, and I guess they're just kind of this intergalactic cartel. I like this one. I thought this was a pretty strong story, like good action and etc. It's not like, I thought I had a good flow to it, but at the end, some ghosts appear, like some alien ghosts show up, and they just wipe out the enemies. That's a bit too convenient. I do think some of the stories wrap up a bit too neatly. That's a bigger complaint just overall throughout the anthology I had, where it's just like, yeah, these alien ghosts are pretty convenient here. I liked the Countess. I liked being like in the head of like, because part of the thing about being like this big space opera, like with all these alien races is, I'd like to get in the head of some of the other alien races and like their points of view and everything. I like this. Something I do not like is the Grand Clarissa. She is like a morale officer, I want to say. She's just like this badass granny that goes around, kicks ass, and also gives out cookies. And this feels pretty jarring because we're dealing with like cartels and like human trafficking and just brutal war stuff. But then we also have like this badass grandma going around. So that was too clashing for me. That's a bit too jarring. Infiltration. We have a Terran woman like infiltrating a slave ring. I felt that we were in people's heads a bit too much here. We're just kind of like drowning in it a little bit. Like I like the idea of like Terrans going after these slavers and everything. I like that. Duty. This had a really great start for me. We have Saitama and he meets this other woman, but basically the opening is Saitama's unit has just been annihilated by these powerful psychic aliens, and now they're hunting him down, and it's like, this is awesome. This is really great, you know. But I had some problems here with some info dumping. I'll show that on the screen, and that's not to be mean. I just want people to see, like, some of the issues I had, you know, just a visual representation rather than me just talking about it, where it's like, we can have a couple paragraphs talking about, like, troop tactics and like guns and like ships, and for me my eyes just kind of glaze over because I'm looking more for like plot, character, like action, that type of thing. And I like the algery, you know, just like the premise of like these humans running around from these psychic aliens that are like getting in their heads and demoralizing them. I think that's great. There's an emphasis on Saitama being this just basic soldier, but he does things which no basic soldier could do. You know, he does things which are just impossible. Just like he takes out an entire enemy camp by himself and he wins. And it just really good premise, but it just comes into like a power fantasy, which it just doesn't really work for me, because if everyone is kind of this badass super soldier, then no one's really badass, right? For like Halo, there's Master Chief and then there's like your regular soldiers. But if all the regular soldiers are like Master Chief and can do like really incredible things, then it makes like the presence of Master Chief like not a big deal. So I don't know, like really good premise here, but I think I would have liked more of them just kind of like running and hiding, maybe killing a few of the Algerie through like ambush or whatever, but like praying and waiting for reinforcements. But them doing all that they did against them was, a bit much for me. Command. I liked Lennart. He's been asleep for 50 years. He wakes up and then 50 years have gone by. It's like, it's kind of terrifying. It's kind of horrible. But some problems I had with this, and I'm not just are like, I like certain elements here. Like we have Cosette. She's this French banker. It turns out that usury is illegal in the future, and I'm like, that's based. We have Sylvia. She's this nurse. A few too many characters here. That's also kind of a bigger problem I have overall. There's Cosette. There's Sylvia. There's Tim Ocean, who is this biker guy who I guess he's a smuggler too. And then there's Josh the Posh, which is another guy who's sort of like a Grand Clarissa, where I don't think she quite fits. A few too many characters. I did really like the fight over the fuel early on. That felt really good. And like Terrans kind of have their backs against the wall because they just seem to beat back their enemies a little too easily. But I really liked the fight over the fuel. But something I did not like was Lennart, despite being asleep for 50 years, he like predicts what the enemy is going to do. You know, like it's been 50 years. Like I would think like their tactics have changed quite a bit, or he's like rusty or something, so he has to like rely more on his crew to like get him through this stuff. But it felt like he was too competent of a commander. I guess maybe like you would have him like lose an engagement or two before like the bigger fight, and then he's able to like pull together for that, something like kind of like that. Growth. This is cool. We get in the head of Dizantari. I'm not going to pronounce these right. And I like being in the head of another race. Like that's cool. And like, I flipped through the glossary in the back. So I guess these guys are part of like I guess it's the Galactic Alliance or whatever. Like they're not an enemy of the Terrans, I don't think. but they're not like great friends. Oh, one thing I want to point out with that glossary, it brings up this race called the Kilra. I don't think they make an appearance in the anthology, so I was kind of weird. I thought that was a little strange, where they're in the glossary, but the Kilra aren't like in the book, unless I missed it. But I don't think there's a Kilra that makes an appearance. Order was cool. Again, I sort of have a little problem with the relationship between Craig and Lisa. I feel like this is a bit too fast. But I like it. We have just a sheriff is killed, and our guy Craig is investigating the murder of a sheriff. We have something with like war beasts, and I'm like, that's really interesting. That's cool. And like some aliens that have like put some of themselves into like drones. They're like living drones, and I'm like, this is cool stuff. I like that. I thought this was interesting. Commando. This is an interesting like alternate history, I guess, for the world, where like the communists have taken over a bunch of places and the Axis is fighting back. So I guess maybe World War II just kept going on or something. I'm not sure exactly. But so we don't really know at the start what's the connection between like the sci-fi universe and everything. So the story starts on 254 and it ends on page 317, but it's not until page 308 that some aliens appear, and then we have like an idea that and then we know like, oh, this is the connection. And I thought that these guys were the Jarn or Jern. I'm not positive, but I think that's Guardian. These is a planet with Lothorians. They're being helped by some Terrans. I think the Prophet is neat, but it kind of runs into the problem where like he's this cool villain and everything, but he becomes like a bit too pathetic. Like a villain should be like, they should be fearsome, they should be intimidating, they should never be like laughed or mocked at or taken lightly. And I feel like he loses that projection of power in the story, so he's not really this formidable villain, So that's something I didn't really. I like the concept of him, and like I guess there's like a sort of like anti-Terran alliance between like the Jarn and some other races, and I'm like, that's cool, that's interesting. But there are some pods that land with some Terran medics in them, and the 6 pods land and they crush and kill 6 Jarn. Again, it's a bit too convenient. It does not work for me. It does not work for me. There, I really didn't care for that. There's also something, the Vaughn, they send some reinforcements for the Terrans to fight the Prophet and his people. So I'm like, okay, I guess the Vaughn are good aliens, but we haven't really met them before. But in the Mage story, which is we're on the planet Averna, which I guess it just went to hell a long time ago, and the Jarn are in control of it. But we meet another Vaughn woman, and she's clearly evil, and it seems like that her race is like very bad and opposed to the Terrans. So I was like really confused. I don't know if like the Vaughn are like split between good Vaughn, who like help the Terrans and the other people in the Alliance, and like the bad ones that kind of do bad shit and work with the Jarn and all that. So I don't know, interesting. Yeah, I was definitely like interested. I'm curious more about like the client races, because it says that in the glossary that the other aliens, they have client races too, but they're not like treated well like the human client races are, because they're just considered like actual sentient beings. So I don't know, like I guess I'd be interested to see like how the aliens treat their client races, because I don't think like, I know this is like an action series, but I think you could do something interesting, and maybe the book series does this, where it's like, how do the aliens treat their client races? Like if you had like the Terran client races meet some of the alien client races, and you can just like see how they're treated or something, and like maybe like it doesn't have to be like the gorillas and the bunnies teach like the alien client races like how to like stab their old masters in the throat and slaughter them. It could just be like showing them, like making them believe that they have self-worth, that they're good, that that this would just like showcase kind of the Terran's virtue, like I don't know even how the client races are treated. Like I guess more it's just like for war, or whatever. Like, I don't know if they would like be left behind or abandoned to like die or starve, if they're just like not worth it. But that, I think that would be kind of interesting to see like that contrast. Again, it's a recommendation. It's somewhat soft because there's some like kind of power fantasy elements, which I don't really like. I would like maybe more competent, like tougher villains and heroes that are more like less sure of themselves, right? Like less sure of themselves, but like still, they can still win. I'd like them to still win, but I would like it kind of to be like, man, we're going up against like these guys. Holy shit, man, we're really getting our asses kicked. And like not like an kind of something really convenient at the end for them to win, but it's just like, hey, we won this time, but it was really close. Kind of a deal. So the media has attacked and demoralized everyone. It's just like pumping out garbage and garbage and garbage by making everything ugly and just nasty. And this is a counter to that. But I feel like there's a bit, there's some power fantasy elements in it that aren't like great. It kind of detracts from it. I still really like the setting. Like I would definitely read more, but at some point, so that's why it's kind of a 3 for me. It's kind of like, it's just kind of like a softer recommendation. Toadstool is this anthology with 3 issues out right now. Each issue is about 60 pages. It's very pleasant and nice with just good artwork. It has stories, poems, crafting recipes, and it's really just very nice. This is a very large recommendation from me. This is for all age. I enjoy it. I think children would definitely enjoy it. Yeah, I heard about this because I follow like the Bizarchives. I follow Agion. Some of the people that write for those two and write for Toadstool as well, like Cuthbertson, and I'm like a fan of his from the Bizarchives and some of his other stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'll check this out. And I was like really, really pleased with it. It definitely seems to be like an Anglo magazine, which is fine. You know, we like those people. They're okay. But I can't really bash the Anglos too much. You know, they gave us Claudius. They gave us Sharp. They gave us better than Sharp. They gave us Obadiah Hakeswell. He's like a patron saint for those people.
Right. This one's yours, Colonel. But no froggy talk. One word in frog and she goes straight back to her cell. Talk English, like a Christian.
In issue 1, some of my favorite stories were Swiss Incident by M.S. Jones. He's another writer for the Bizarchives. We have Miriam and Martin, Heist at the Fairy Court, and Rua the Red by Cuthbertson. Rua the Red, I think, is my favorite. Like, overall for the series, he's kind of, you know, it's similar to the Bizarchives with Count Choralor. But we also have Pondit Skippity Barn, which features this little hedgehog. Rua the Red features the squirrel. We'll get into animal discrimination when I cover issue 2, but whatever. I'll get to it in this minute. Just give me a minute. In issue 2, we have Gnome Alone by M.S. Jones. This is a parody of Die Hard. It's like Die Hard with gnomes. It's very good. It's very funny. We have a continuation of Rua. And I really like this. This is about this red squirrel who's trying to find more red squirrels because these gray squirrels have invaded their home and they've driven their people away. And he's trying to just find his tribe, right? He's trying to find his tribe of red squirrels. I really love this image of the squirrels with swords. Just imagine like a human walking in the forest and you have just 2 squirrels going at each other like that, because some of the other artwork is like Rua and like knightly armor and stuff like that. You know, it's very good. We have Mittens, well remembered. This is about this cat that gets outside, and then there's this confrontation with these raccoons. I will say, here's where I'm gonna. All right, so this is like some of the complaints I have with Toadstool. This is like an Anglo-Saxon magazine, which is fine, right? But right here in issue 2, and I thought, okay, they're only choosing animals which can appear in, which are native to England. And I'm like, that's whatever. That's their choice. But in Mittens, they have raccoons. Raccoons are native to North America. They are not native to England, right? I read all 3 issues. There is not a single story with a porcupine. Porcupines are great. They are our animal. The porcupine is the white man's pit bull. their exclusion from this magazine is just discrimination at best, but malicious at worst. You know, I really don't get that. They're just, I don't know. I like porcupines a lot, and their exclusion, that was a bit much. Also, there are no rabbits in this anthology. No rabbits get a story, and I'm like, Watership Down is English. That's a great movie, but there are no rabbits here. I couldn't really understand that. You know, politically, I'm more of a General Woundwort type of rabbit, but that's neither here nor there. Just there's a lot of little exclusions, you know. Back to issue 2. We have Rambold. This is by Cuthbertson. This is a like fairy thing, post-apocalyptic story. This was interesting. We have Rude Elf by M.S. Jones and Bergot. Bergot is like another Miriam and Martin story, and they're just trying to go around and like keep the deep forest safe and everything. It's like all very good, interesting stories. Yeah, they have like crafting stuff in here as well, and it's just like cool, and just like the artwork. I'm gonna put up a few examples of the artwork, but it's just great. It's just really wonderful. The exclusion of porcupines and rabbits notwithstanding. Issue 3, we have Feel the Sunrise of A.J. Bell. This is good. We have Spring Clean for the May Queen, M.S. Jones. And Miriam and Martin, Pixie Dust by Cuthbertson. Tales from the Legend of Genvalsa, which was interesting. A little like weird, but I liked it. Another story with Rua, who fights some crows and some grays. And like this whole like the previous 2 installments, boys, I don't know how to say this, but I was somewhat concerned that this squirrel might not find his people, and he was going to find that he was all alone out there. But he finds his fellow Reds, you know, and they beat the shit out of some gray squirrels. It's great. It's just great. I think I got a little too invested in what would happen with this squirrel, but I'm glad he made it, you know. And the next installment of that, of them reclaiming their forest, you know, I'm looking forward to that. And we have a Mayday's Night scheme, which I liked as well. Anyways, Toadstool, very big recommendation. Maybe like one editing mistake that I saw in like the first issue, but like that's it. The rest of the editing is like great. The short stories are good. Like it's just pleasant, you know. It's just pleasant, and it's a welcome reprieve from like everything else that's out there. It's very, very strong, and I absolutely want to read more. And you get some nice cross-pollination from like the Agion and the Bizarchives people to do all this. Toadstool is like the ending of Watership Down. You know what I mean? It's the ending of Watership Down. If you don't know what that means, watch Watership Down. That's very basic. It's not like the ending of Plague Dogs. You know, I think there's too much of like the ending of Plague Dogs, which is shared on Twitter and everything like that. That is not a movie I want to talk about. Anyways, that's going to be it. I'm probably going to have some like crime movie review thing. I don't know. Maybe next week. Next up for like the Trough stuff is going to be 2 books by Jordan Allen. He's written for the Bizarchives, and I think Agion once. And a book by Dave Martell, The Weird Works of Dave Martell. That'll be it. Thanks for watching. Dr. Infinity out.
Here's 40 shillings on the drum to those who volunteer to come to list and fight the foe today, over the hills and far away, o'er the hills and o'er the main, through Flanders, Portugal and Spain. King George commands and we obey. Oh,